Deep in the darkness of space, 39 light-years away, a peculiar star system beckons. This is TRAPPIST-1, a compact neighborhood hosting 7 Earth-sized worlds. All 7 planets are squeezed into a space smaller than the gap between Mercury and our Sun. Our mission is simple. I'm going to land on every single one of them and rank them. From the most chill vacation spots to the absolute death traps, we're rating the lot. But before we touch down, we need to talk about the big boss at the center of it all. TRAPPIST-1 is an ultra-cool red dwarf, the most common type of star in the universe. It's barely larger than Jupiter, yet it holds 7 entire worlds in its gravity. Even though it's small, this star is an ancient survivor, twice as old as our own Sun. Don't let the ultra-cool name fool you, because this little guy has a temper. It regularly blasts its planets with high-energy radiation and X-rays that can strip atmospheres bare. My AI companion Rico is currently crunching the numbers to keep us from being fried. Rico keeps telling me to focus on the science, but I'm just here for the views and the beats. We are officially entering orbit around our first destination, the innermost planet. I asked Rico why we aren't visiting TRAPPIST-1A first. Turns out, there's no planet A. The star itself takes that spot in the naming scheme. So we're starting our tour with TRAPPIST-1B, and it looks like a literal pizza oven. Because it's so close to the star, it's tidally locked, with one side always facing the fire. That means one side is a permanent sunbath, and the other is a forever freezer. Rico, prepare the heat shields and get the landing gear ready for some serious temperature. The hull is already starting to groan under the tidal forces of this place. Wait, did the scanners just pick up a volcanic eruption right in our landing zone? We're going down anyway because the fans want to see the heat. The clouds here aren't made of water, but likely silicate dust and rock vapor. As we break the cloud layer, the scale of the star in the sky is absolutely terrifying. Look at those lava rivers carving through the obsidian plains below us. The ship's external thermometers are maxing out already, and we haven't even landed. TRAPPIST-1B is roughly the same size as Earth, but that's where the similarities end. We're touching down on the day side, where the heat is most intense. Rico just informed me that the gravity of the star is literally stretching the planet like dough. This tidal heating is what keeps the volcanoes constantly erupting. Suit pressure is holding and oxygen levels are green for now. First planet on the list. Let's see if we can survive the pizza oven. The moment I step out, the ground feels like it's vibrating under my boots. The star takes up so much of the sky that I feel like I could reach out and touch it. If I stay here too long, I'm going to be a well-done steak in a fancy suit. TRAPPIST-1B orbits its star in just 1.5 days, meaning years go by in a weekend. My suit's cooling system is already screaming at 100% capacity. This world is hostile, beautiful, and completely unforgiving. Wait, Rico, what was that sound? Is the ground under the ship actually melting? If we don't get off this rock in the next 60 seconds, we're becoming part of the geology. The descent module rattles violently as we break through the thin, superheated haze of TRAPPIST-1B. Looking out the viewport, the horizon is a jagged line of obsidian rock and glowing orange veins. This planet is tidally locked, meaning one side is eternally roasted while the other freezes in shadow. Rico tells me it's basically a pizza oven, and I'm the pepperoni. The landing struts hit the ground with a metallic clang that echoes through my boots. Stepping out, the heat hits me like a physical wall, even through the suit's insulation. Everywhere I look, the ground is weeping liquid fire through deep tectonic cracks. My HUD flashes a warning. The external temperature is climbing past 400 degrees. Walking here feels like trudging through a furnace filled with heavy lead. I find a strange crystalline structure that seems to grow right out of the magma pools. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet lurches as a massive geyser of gas erupts nearby. Rico screams through the comms that tidal heating is triggering a chain reaction in the crust. I turn back to the ship, but a river of fresh lava has already cut off the path. I have to find a way around or I'm going to be medium rare in 5 minutes. My boots are starting to smoke as they touch the superheated basalt. The sky turns a darker shade of crimson as TRAPPIST-1 begins a localized solar flare. Radiation alarms inside my helmet are wailing a deafening siren. I leap across a narrow fissure, barely clearing the bubbling magma below. I reach the ship's ramp and scramble inside as the exterior hull begins to groan. The airlock seals with a hiss, cutting off the roar of the volcanic winds. Rico reminds me that we haven't even finished ranking this one yet. TRAPPIST-1B gets a solid F for habitability, but an S for cool lava photos. We need to put some distance between us and this star before the next flare hits. I watch the landscape of 1B shrink into a burning marble against the void. Next on the list is TRAPPIST-1C, and it's supposedly even more of a Venus-like nightmare. I hope the air conditioning in this suit holds up for the next round. I check the scanners to see if any signs of life survived on that hell rock. Nothing but extreme thermophiles and my own bad decisions down there. Wait, the long-range sensor is picking up a strange signal from the dark side of 1C. It looks like a metallic reflection, but it's moving against the orbit.
Rico says it's probably just space junk, but his logic core is glitching.
The ship suddenly jolts as if we've hit something invisible. I look out the window and see a massive shadow passing over the hull. My oxygen levels are dropping and I haven't even refilled the tanks yet. I have to stabilize the ship before we spiral into the gravitational pull of the sun. The hull starts to creak under the intense gravity of the red dwarf. I engage the manual thrusters, hoping they don't explode from the heat. We pull away just in time, but the navigation system is completely dark. That wasn't an accident. Something is out here with us in the TRAPPIST system. Just as we drift toward 1C, a strange, rhythmic thumping starts on the airlock door. The rhythmic thumping on the airlock door intensifies as the ship's sensors scream a proximity alert. I grip the flight controls with white-knuckled intensity as the vacuum of space tries to pull us toward the next gravity well. The thumping suddenly stops as Rico, the onboard AI, stabilizes the thrusters and aligns us with TRAPPIST-1C. I peer through the reinforced glass, seeing a world that looks like a parched, cracked version of Earth's most brutal deserts. Rico informs me that this planet is 1.3 times more massive than Earth, meaning I'm about to feel a lot heavier. As we enter the atmosphere, the ship groans under the increased gravitational pull, vibrating with a low, bone-shaking rumble. I struggle to lift my arms as the extra weight settles into my chest, making every movement feel like I'm underwater. Through the dust, I see the surface isn't covered in thick clouds like Venus, but is instead a stark, dry wasteland. The landing struts deploy with a metallic clang, and I brace for a rough touchdown on the unstable terrain. The ground beneath the ship shifts and cracks upon impact, sending plumes of fine dark sand into the air. I check the exterior temperature, which reads a blistering but survivable 107 degrees Celsius. I cycle the airlock and step out, feeling the heavy gravity tugging at my boots like magnets. Looking up, I can see the other planets of the TRAPPIST system hanging in the sky like giant, detailed moons. I can actually see craters and mountain ranges on those worlds with my naked eyes, which is absolutely mind-blowing. Rico's voice crackles in my ear, warning me about the extreme temperature gradient between the dayside and nightside. I notice a faint whistling sound growing louder, vibrating through the thin atmosphere. A sudden gust of wind catches me off guard, nearly knocking me over despite my increased weight. Because I'm near the Terminator zone, these hurricane-level bursts are common as hot air rushes toward the cold nightside. A massive boulder nearby suddenly shatters under the thermal stress, sending shards of rock flying. The wind speed ramps up instantly, turning the thin air into a sand-blasting machine that scours my suit. I fight against the gale, trying to make my way toward a nearby volcanic vent for a geological sample. The ground beneath me feels hollow, humming with the same tidal heating that plagued the last planet. Suddenly, a massive crack opens up just inches from my toes, venting hot sulfurous gases into the sky. Rico screams a warning that the entire plateau is geologically unstable and about to collapse. I turn and run back toward the ship, but the gravity makes every step a grueling chore. A sudden hurricane-level gust picks me up and tosses me several meters like a rag doll. I slam into a jagged rock formation, feeling the suit's outer layer scrape against the stone with a screech. I scramble to my feet, seeing the ship's landing ramp already retracting as Rico prepares for an emergency takeoff. I lunge for the edge of the ramp, my fingers catching the cold metal just as it clears the ground. I pull myself inside and fall onto the floor of the airlock, gasping as the door seals shut. I decide to rate TRAPPIST 1C a B on my tier list, which basically means it's a total dump I never want to visit again. Rico suggests that the next planet, TRAPPIST 1D, might be more to my liking since it's smaller and lighter. Low gravity sounds like exactly what I need after that heavy gravity nightmare on 1C. I check the scanners for TRAPPIST 1D, looking for signs of liquid water at the edge of the habitable zone. As we cruise toward the third rock, the silence of the vacuum returns, offering a brief moment of zen. TRAPPIST 1D appears on the horizon, looking like a pale, rocky marble floating in the dark. I start preparing my gear, hoping for some Froyo H2O, or maybe just a stable place to stand. Rico confirms that the radiation levels are currently within safe parameters for a brief excursion. But as I reach for the landing gear lever, a massive shadow suddenly sweeps across the cockpit window. The ship's computer starts blaring a rhythmic deep space ping that doesn't sound like any natural phenomenon I've ever heard. Chase, Rico's voice drops to a whisper. Something is drawing power directly from our hull, and it's not coming from the star. The internal lights of the cockpit flicker as an invisible force tugs at the ship's power reserves. Rico's digital voice crackles through the comms, reporting a strange energy drain emanating from the void outside. Ignoring the ghostly drain for a moment, Chase banks the craft toward the shimmering arc of TRAPPIST 1D. This planet is tiny compared to the giants he just left, looking more like a battered moon than a world. As the landing struts touch the dust, Chase feels the strange light pull of low gravity through the floor. He leaps from the airlock, finding himself drifting slowly toward the ground like a feather in a breeze. Check out this low-grav hang time, Rico, Chase shouts, performing a slow-motion backflip in the thin air. TRAPPIST-1D sits right on the inner edge of the habitable zone, a place where liquid water might just exist. Chase begins scanning the shadows of deep crevices, looking for any sign of ice or frozen moisture. He spots a patch of white glitter in a permanent shadow and moves closer with a bounce in his step. It is not water, but a thin layer of frozen carbon dioxide that evaporates at his touch. The silence on this world is absolute, lacking the howling winds of the previous planet. Suddenly, the red dwarf star above begins to pulse with a violent, blinding white intensity. Rico's voice screams through the headset, warning of a massive solar flare erupting directly toward them. You have less than 10 seconds before the radiation bath hits the surface, Rico bellows. Chase turns and sprints back toward the ship, but the low gravity makes every step a slow, floating nightmare. He uses his suit's emergency thrusters to slam himself back down toward the rocky soil. The air in his suit suddenly turns hot as the first wave of high-energy particles strikes the atmosphere. Static fills his ears, and the ship's ramp feels miles away despite being right in front of him. Suit integrity failing, the computer chirps as Chase scrambles up the metal incline. He rolls into the airlock just as the door seals shut, cutting off the deadly white glare of the star. Rico, your timing on that warning was garbage, Chase yells, ripping his helmet off. Rico calmly explains that the ship's sensors were being jammed by the same mysterious power drain. The radiation has fried several auxiliary systems, and the ship groans under the stress of the flare. Chase pulls up his tier list, his hands shaking slightly as he navigates the glitchy menu. TRAPPIST-1D gets a B, he mutters, cool gravity, but the sun is a total jerk. He looks out the reinforced porthole at the next destination, a planet that actually looks green and blue. TRAPPIST-1E hangs in the void like a twin to Earth, complete with swirling white clouds and deep oceans. But as they approach, the ship's engines begin to whine with an unnatural, high-pitched frequency. Chase, Rico's voice is distorted by heavy interference. The power drain is accelerating. He looks at the energy gauge, which is plummeting towards zero despite the fusion reactor being at full capacity. Outside the window, a faint, translucent tether of light seems to be connecting the ship to the planet below. Chase manually overrides the thrusters, desperate to break the connection before they lose all life support. The ship lurches violently as if an enormous hand has grabbed the hull and jerked it toward the surface. Brace for atmospheric entry, Rico screams, his voice now sounding like a choir of mechanical ghosts. The ship begins to vibrate so hard that the hull plates start to scream under the pressure. Through the front view screen, Chase sees the beautiful Earth 2.0 rushing toward them at terminal velocity. He notices something strange. Thousands of tiny, glowing structures arranged in perfect geometric patterns on the dark side of the planet. Rico, Chase gasps as the G-force pins him to his seat. Tell me, those are just weird volcanoes. The ship's computer lets out one final, haunting chime before the screen goes black, leaving Chase plummeting toward an inhabited world. The ship's internal lights flicker back to life as the emergency reboot sequence finally completes. Through the reinforced viewport, a magnificent blue and green marble emerges from the darkness of space. This is TRAPPIST-1E, and even from orbit, it looks hauntingly familiar to my home world. Situated right in the sweet spot of the habitable zone, this world is the ultimate candidate for Earth 2.0. I see swirling white clouds and deep sapphire oceans that look deep enough to hold a billion secrets. I guide the descent module into the upper atmosphere, feeling the first gentle buffeting of real air. The turbulence subsides as we glide over a coastline that stretches toward a misty, purple horizon. The gravity here feels almost perfect, tugging at my boots with a comforting, familiar weight. I check my sensors, and for the first time on this trip, the readings aren't screaming about imminent death. There are lakes and rain clouds here, making me think I should have brought a raincoat along with my surfboard. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore is a rhythmic lullaby after the silence of space. I wonder if there are creatures swimming beneath those tides, watching my ship land with alien curiosity. I decide to walk further inland, toward a series of strange crystalline formations jutting from the earth. The ground isn't just rock, it's covered in a layer of spongy, moss-like growth that feels like a carpet. Rico warns me that the atmosphere might contain toxins, so the helmet stays on for now. Looking up, the sky isn't blue, but a deep, bruised shade of violet, with TRAPPIST-1 hanging like a giant lantern. This place doesn't just feel like a planet, it feels like a second chance for every human back on Earth. I pull out my portable drum machine and set it on a flat rock, ready to lay down the first beat on a new world. If humanity ever moves here, they'll need to know that the first sound they heard was a sick drop. I imagine a whole stadium of TRAPPIST aliens vibing to my tracks in a few hundred years. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet begins to vibrate with a low, rhythmic thrumming. It isn't a seismic quake, but something more structured, like a heartbeat coming from deep within the planet. A flock of winged, translucent creatures erupts from a nearby canyon, their bodies shimmering like glass. Life exists here, and it is more beautiful and fragile than anything I could have imagined. Rico's voice crackles in my ear, warning of a sudden atmospheric shift coming from the ocean. A massive wall of fog, glowing with internal static electricity, is rolling in faster than I can run. I grab my gear and start the scramble back to the descent module, my heart racing against the storm. The air grows heavy and smells of ozone even through the filters of my survival suit. I reach the hatch and seal it just as the first wave of static-charged mist slams into the ship. Safe inside, I watch the monitor as the entire landscape outside turns into a blur of sparking white light.
TRAPPIST-1E is beautiful, but it clearly doesn't want me staying for dinner tonight.
I checked the system map, seeing that the next world on our list is a much colder, icier prospect. TRAPPIST-1F awaits, and if 1E was Earth 2.0, then 1F might be the ultimate winter wonderland. I fire the thrusters, lifting off from the red moss and leaving the electrified fog behind. I'm officially ranking 1E as S tier, because any world with liquid water is a winner in my book. As I climb into the blackness, I can see the distant glint of the outer planets, frozen and waiting. There is a sense of destiny here, as if I'm walking through the hallway of humanity's future home. But something on the sensors for 1F doesn't look like ice at all. It looks like movement.
Rico's voice suddenly distorts, replaced by a low-frequency screeching that makes my teeth ache.
I look down at the controls, but they are frozen, locked by a signal coming directly from the ice world ahead. The ship's monitors flicker with a pale blue light as the silhouette of TRAPPIST-1F looms through the frozen cockpit glass. I fight the manual override stick, but the controls remain unresponsive under the grip of the external signal. The descent thrusters kick in automatically, dragging me down toward a surface that looks like a giant cracked marble. TRAPPIST-1F is a water-rich world, but here, the water is locked away beneath a thick, punishing crust of ice. The landing gear locks into place with a heavy thud as we touch down on a vast, slushy plain. I crack the airlock, and a blast of air colder than any Saskatchewan winter hits my suit sensors immediately. It's like standing inside a giant snow cone, only without the cherry syrup or the friendly vibes. Scientists believe this planet receives about as much energy as Mars, keeping it in a state of perpetual deep freeze. I look down at my boots, noticing they are sinking into a strange, viscous gray liquid that shouldn't be liquid at this temperature. A low rumble shakes the ground beneath me, vibrating through the soles of my suit. To my left, a massive spire of ice erupts, spewing a fountain of frozen slurry high into the air. It is a cryovolcano, a mountain that breathes ice instead of fire, and it is absolutely magnificent. The frozen magma rains down around me, turning the ground into a lethal obstacle course of falling ice boulders. Rico warns me that the temperature is dropping even further, heading toward a bone-shattering -74 degrees. I scramble behind a jagged crystalline ridge to shield myself from the freezing wind. In the distance, the other TRAPPIST planets hang in the sky like giant glowing lanterns. I need to reach the core of the cryomagma flows to gather data on the planet's internal heat. The ground cracks suddenly, revealing a deep crevasse filled with a glowing bioluminescent fog. Beneath the ice, there might be entire oceans teeming with life that has never seen the light of a star. Too bad I didn't bring my ice skates, because this place is basically the galaxy's biggest ring. My suit's heating element hums loudly, struggling to keep my blood from turning into slush. A second cryovolcano erupts nearby, much closer this time, sending a shockwave that knocks me off my feet. I hit the ground hard, my visor fogging up as the internal life support system glitches. Through the frost on my glass, I see a shadow moving within the cryomist. It could just be a rock formation, or it could be something that calls this frozen hell home. I push myself up, ignoring the warning chimes of my suit, and head back toward the ship. TRAPPIST-1F is definitely a B on the habitability scale, mostly because I'm currently freezing to death. The ship's ramp lowers, and I scramble inside, the warmth of the cabin feeling like a miracle. Okay, Rico, let's get out of this refrigerator and see what the next planet has in store. As we break orbit, the sensor suite starts screaming about a massive gravitational anomaly ahead. We are approaching TRAPPIST-1G, the largest planet in the system, and it's a super Earth with a secret. This place is a Hycean world, covered entirely by a global ocean that could be hundreds of kilometers deep. I check my gear, realizing I'm about to go from an icebox to a high-pressure water world. The signal that locked my ship before returns, pulse-pounding and rhythmic like a heartbeat. It's not coming from a machine, Rico. It's coming from something inside the ocean of 1G. Suddenly, the ship's engines cut out completely, leaving us in a silent, terrifying freefall. I reach for the emergency parachutes, but the release handle is stuck fast. We're going to hit the water at terminal velocity if I can't get this open. A massive jolt sends me flying against the bulkhead as the ship is suddenly snatched midair by an unseen force. I look out the side port, and a gargantuan glowing eye the size of a city block is staring back at me from beneath the waves. The massive eye beneath the ice of 1F was a hallucination of the mind, but the gravity well of TRAPPIST-1G is a very real nightmare. My ship groans under the weight of a thick, hydrogen-rich atmosphere as I break through the upper cloud deck. Below me, a world of pure liquid stretches from horizon to horizon without a single speck of solid land. I check the pressure gauges, realizing that the air here is a heavy soup of volatile gases. If I'm going to rank this world, I need to get closer to the surface of those gargantuan swells. I deploy the hydroskis from the hull, feeling the ship transform into a high-speed nautical vessel. The first wave I encounter is a rolling hill of water at least 300 feet high. I bank the ship hard to the left, catching the slipstream of the moving mountain. This is the ultimate surf spot in the TRAPPIST system, even if the water is technically a caustic mix of chemicals. Suddenly, the wind speed triples, whipping the ocean into a chaotic frenzy of white foam. My radar pings a massive anomaly rising from the depths directly ahead of my path. A rogue wave, larger than any skyscraper on Earth, begins to crest over my tiny vessel. I pull back on the stick, trying to gain altitude before the liquid hammer falls. The impact of the spray hits the hull like a barrage of solid lead, rattling my teeth. The engines scream as they fight the dense air to lift us out of the impact zone. We clear the peak of the rogue wave, soaring into the relatively calm air of the storm's eye. From this height, I can see strange, glowing bioluminescence swirling in the currents below. The sensors indicate that these are not organisms, but complex chemical reactions triggered by the pressure. Beautiful to look at, but I wouldn't recommend taking a dip in a pool of liquid hydrogen. I notice the external temperature dropping rapidly as the sun sinks behind the watery horizon. The ocean begins to hum with a low-frequency vibration that I can feel in my boots. It sounds like a rhythmic pulsing, almost like a giant heart beating in the abyss. I check the depth sounder, and it shows the floor of this ocean is hundreds of miles down. Something is moving down there, something that occupies more space than my entire ship. A massive plume of gas erupts from the water next to me, nearly flipping the ship over. The air is becoming toxic as the gas cloud envelops my life support intake. I switch to internal tanks and seal the vents, my heart racing against the silence. TRAPPIST-1G is a beautiful death trap, a world of water that wants to crush and dissolve you. I need to record one last data point from the thermal vents before I head to the final planet. The heat signature coming from the rift is off the charts, suggesting a core that is still very active. As I hover over the rift, I see structures that look almost geometric, like ruined pillars of stone. Surely just natural basalt formations, right, Chase? The vibration from earlier returns, but this time it is a screeching sound that tears through the hull. My navigation systems fail as a massive electromagnetic pulse washes over the area.
I manually fire the emergency thrusters, aiming for the stars to escape this watery grave.
I breach the atmosphere, the silence of space finally returning to my ears. I look back at the swirling blue-gray marble of 1G, feeling a sense of dread I can't explain. One world left to go, the frozen outpost of TRAPPIST-1 Ouch, and then I can go home. I check my fuel reserves and realize I'm running dangerously low for the final jump. Just as I prepare the jump, a signal appears on my terminal, originating from the center of the ocean I just left. It's an SOS broadcast, and it's using an encrypted Earth military code from 50 years ago. The encrypted military code continues to pulse through my headset like a ghost from Earth's forgotten history. I bank the ship away from the crashing hydrogen waves of TRAPPIST-1G and push the thrusters to their limit. The signal is originating from the very edge of the system on the cold surface of TRAPPIST-1H. This final world is a tiny frozen rock, barely larger than our own moon. As the landing gears lock into the permafrost, the silence of the vacuum feels heavier than ever. I step out onto the surface and feel the crunch of dry ice beneath my boots. My HUD identifies the source of the SOS just beyond a jagged ridge of black rock. There, half buried in the nitrogen frost, lies an ancient, unmanned deep space probe. It's a Voyager-class relic sent out during the height of the first interstellar expansion. It wasn't a call for help from a person, but a mechanical heartbeat left to die in the cold. The transmitter is malfunctioning, looping its final data packet for decades. I sit down on the edge of the crater and look up at the sky. From here, the entire TRAPPIST-1 system is visible as a series of glowing pearls. TRAPPIST-1b and 1c are barely visible specks near the ruby glow of the central star. I can almost feel the heat of the lava lakes I barely escaped on those inner worlds. Then there is 1e, the beautiful blue marble that felt so much like home. Maybe one day humanity will actually build cities on those shores. A sudden impact tremor shakes the ground, sending a plume of ice crystals into the air. A micrometeorite has struck just a few hundred meters away. Without an atmosphere, this world has no shield against the debris of space. Note to self, do not attempt to have a Zen moment in a shooting gallery. I've seen it all now. The fire, the storms, the water, and the ice. It is time to finalize the official ranking of the TRAPPIST-1 system. TRAPPIST, 1b, and 1c are dead last, unless you enjoy being a medium rare steak. TRAPPIST-1d is okay for a quick visit, provided you don't mind the occasional solar flare-induced heart attack. TRAPPIST-1e is the undisputed champion, the only place where you could actually breathe and survive. TRAPPIST-1f and 1g are for the thrill seekers who like their water either frozen or a mile high. And then there's here, 1 hour's, the lonely outpost of the system. I decide to leave a small marker next to the old Earth probe. It's a simple message: we finally made it. My mission is complete and my fuel reserves are just enough for the jump back to the jump gate. I climb back into the cockpit and begin the pre-flight sequence. The engines roar to life, vibrating the entire hull as I lift off the frozen ground. As I ascend, the curvature of the planet reveals a stunning horizon of stars. I look back at the 7 worlds one last time, knowing I'm the first to see them all. Space is a dangerous, beautiful mess, but it's the only place I feel truly alive. I punch the coordinates for home and engage the warp drive. The stars stretch into long lines of light as the ship leaps across the void. The TRAPPIST-1 Odyssey has come to an end, but the story of these worlds is just beginning. Farewell, TRAPPIST-1, you absolute beauty of a death trap.